Hello, and welcome to After the Sermon, a Bethany podcast where we have the privilege of digging deeper into our Sunday messages. I'm Tami and today I am joined with Pastor Steve Musto. He'll be giving us our message.
Yes.
And we have got you here, Tylor. I am enjoying the summer because we get to have new guests on. So you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, so I'm Tylor Fischer. I am the elder chair currently, sitting on the elder board, and have the unique privilege of having spent my entire life in this church. That's like my claim to fame. I was born here, came up through children's ministry, and have served in most areas, but currently on the elder board. So
that's awesome. Well, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, happy to be
Super
here.
fun. I know we're going through the Psalms, and they are actually songs.
Yeah.
And so my challenge to you is to give us a song title. How would you, we're doing Psalms 21. First of all, I should say that. What would be the song that you would choose to accompany this song?
I think this one is Walking on Sunshine, Katrina and the Waves.
Okay.
For all my 80s kids.
Okay.
Because this is all about answered prayer. That's what Psalm 21 is about. And David has, it's credited to David, but the psalmist has asked for something very specific, and he has received that. And so Psalm 21 is a song of praise. And isn't it great? Isn't it wonderful? Things could not be better. It's like, it's like a summertime, jam. It's one of those songs.
Yep, that's good. And so I know you're focusing on 21, but you can't talk about 21 without talking about 20.
Right.
Because that's where we see the cry of his heart and God answering the prayer. I know I would love for the formula to always be, you pray 20 and you get 21.
Yeah.
I like that.
20. So 20 is David just saying, we're on the cusp of this battle. We're going into battle. We really need your help. Obviously, God, you lead us. You're the God of angel armies. We need you to go before us and to do for Israel all the things that you've promised to do. And so in our time, and this is one of the difficulties of reading the Bible, is we read it fast.
Yeah.
We read it in a sitting.
Yep.
We read it and then we go from 20 to 21.
Yeah.
You think about like even the story of David's life, you can read in a sitting, his whole life. But it years and years and years of all the waiting and what we don't have is the day, all of the days in between the days.
Right.
Yeah.
So it looks like, it happens so quickly. So we don't know the time frame between Psalm 20, God help us, and Psalm 21, which was, yay, you helped us.
Yeah.
And it's the Psalm of praise. And that is actually one of the challenges of reading the Bible is we want the instant gratification because it feels like that's what happens here.
Yes. Yeah. And we see that all throughout the Old Testament and the New Testament, really. But you struggle with this idea of waiting, and we don't see that waiting. And I think that's where so many of us get caught and we get stuck and we start to question the answer is coming. We start to question 21 because we get stuck in this waiting pattern. We're like, well, this doesn't seem right. Maybe I didn't pray right. Maybe God didn't hear me. Maybe he's just not listening. Maybe he doesn't care.
Yeah.
Right. And we get stuck here. And that's where I feel like a lot of us struggle.
Yeah.
A lot of times.
In between Psalm 20 and 21, in the stuck pattern.
Even, I think about this every year at Easter time on Good Friday at about 9:00, I think Jesus goes to the cross right now, or right around now.
Yeah.
And then right around 3:00, all of the things I've done that day, that's 6 hours.
Yeah.
And a lot has happened.
A lot has happened. He's been on the cross that whole time. And the agony of that, and it's shocking to my system every year when I have that. If you want that experience, set 2 alarms. Set an alarm to go off at 9 a.m. and set an alarm to go off at 3 p.m. just on a random day, and you will experience that. How much happens in those 6 hours? So we have that here. So we have the psalmist asking for something, and then an indeterminate amount of time, and then the answer.
So what about those people that feel stuck between 20 and 21? They've asked, they're waiting for this answer that's going to be amazing that we can celebrate. How do we talk to them? Because I know there are going to be those sitting in our audience.
Oh, I'm stuck between 20 and 21. I mean, in some areas of my life.
That's true.
I mean, don't you feel like you are?
Yep.
Stuck.
Yeah. I mean, we're praying for things and asking God for things that we have not seen his hand yet.
Yeah.
And, you get stuck. You can get stuck in your faith. You can get stuck there if that thing that you're asking for is too big and too pressing and too on you all the time. And if that becomes bigger than your faith, if you're paying it too much mind or too much attention, that thing can become too big. And that's where, a lot of people get stuck in their faith right there.
Right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think one of the questions we have to ask when we're stuck in something like that is, do I feel like is my focus on the thing that I want answered, or is my focus on who God is? Right? Like, so let's just pick something like finances is something probably everyone at some point in their life has struggled with, right? Wrestled with. Finances are short, mortgage payment is coming up, whatever. If we're praying over a situation or something comes up and we're praying over that and we're asking God for that answer, is our opinion of God determined on his answer? And
Well, the answer should be, it shouldn't be.
it shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be,
But I think that's what we have to ask ourselves if we
Right.
find ourselves stuck. Why am I stuck? Why am I struggling with this so much? Is it because what I think about God depends on how he answers this?
Yes.
And if that's the answer to that is yes, then I think we have to do a heart check and say, where's my actual focus? Because then it's the whole old adage of I'm treating God like a genie, right? Like I'm just looking to him to try and get something, or, which is I think the heart of what you see in all these Psalms, is the request a reflection of who I know God is. And that kind of leads to another question of like, well, what if the outcome's different than what I want? What if the outcome is this? But it all has to be driven through a reflection of who I know God is and allowing that to inform everything else rather than the inverse. I know that's the way I have to approach it.
This is Job.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Job. I mean, his prayer of, though he slay me,
Yeah.
still I will trust in him. And I think that is a 301, 401, 501 level
Yeah.
of Christian faith.
Of
that is-
maturity in the Lord.
Of maturity, yeah, that is frustrating and difficult to folks who are newer in their faith in particular, or not mature in their faith. And that is often what will trip up new believers or believers who have never really grown in their faith. It's that idea that I asked for this. I see no possible reason in my sphere
why he wouldn't have said yes.
why he wouldn't have granted this. And then, and here we are. And, I've talked about this on the podcast before. I have a friend who just lost her second child, her second teenage child. She has 4 kids. And it's incomprehensible, all the things that this woman has been through. And when I got the text, I didn't believe it. Like, no, this is not possible, because see, in my mind,
God would not do that.
God wouldn't do that. She's a widow. She's loved. She's, all these things. God is going to show favor and protect her and guard her. And then she loves him. She loves him more fiercely than most people I know love the Lord. Yeah. And yet here this happens. And it does create for everyone involved a challenge in your faith. Even me, where I just go to God and I put my palms up and say, I don't understand you. I don't understand what you're doing. I love you and I trust you. I trust you a little less right now in this moment. Which, by the way, is one of David's responses as well to God when Uzzah reaches out and touches the ark and Shidnani struck dead. And David is afraid of God and says, whoa, wait. I thought I knew you.
Yeah.
And he's been selling him a little short, the holiness of God.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of this journey, is coming to a point of saying, I yield those results to you and I say, God, you are holy, you are other, and you know far more than I do.
So we want 20 and 21 to be this formula where we get our way. oftentimes God answers our prayers. In this situation, David's prayers were answered the way he wanted them, and he chose to be thankful. And so I know thankfulness is something you really want to touch this Sunday. I love when I look at this, just the class I'm taking, I'm charting things. So I'm looking at the subject, I'm looking at the verb, I'm having so much fun. So the first half of the Psalm, we see God did,
Yep.
so he lists all that God did. And then the second half, God will do. And so there is a looking back and there is a looking forward.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important in our walk with the Lord.
Yeah.
So
many tenses in Hebrew, they make sense in English when we put them in a tense, in a past tense or present tense, but a lot of Hebrew is written in a tense that doesn't make sense to us. It's like God is continuing to do faithfulness in this situation.
It's almost like a tense that does it
always.
all.
Yes. Consistently. And that is mirrored a lot in the Old Testament. We see that a lot in the Old Testament. And because God is timeless, God exists equally in the past, present, and future. We have limits of time, and he does not. And so the same God who did these things is the same God who is doing these things, is the same God who will do these things. And there is no limit to that. But yeah, that's interesting you picked up on that. That's absolutely right.
I know that helps me. And so before I had a story of God's faithfulness, seeing God's faithfulness to his people in the word helped. Now in my 50s, I do have my own story, but then I can look forward to knowing what he's going to do, even if that forward is just heaven. But thankfulness is what we need to do. This is a great formula to be thankful. Why aren't we thankful? What stops us from having this attitude?
Tyler, you said something, we were talking about this earlier about thankfulness and about what hits our radar. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, I was saying, what's the threshold that we thank God for?
Yeah.
Like that's something I have to address that in my life all the time, because something major happens, or you've been praying a Psalms 20 prayer and you see God answer it, and it's this amazing thing. And you just you just throw your hands up and you just go, wow, God, that was incredible. But do we also thank him for the tiny victories or the things, so much of our life we just take for granted. And I think that's why we aren't thankful. But like every morning when I wake up, do I say a prayer and I'm thankful to God for my wife and our marriage and the blessing that is, because that's a blessing. Like as Tiffany and I have prayed over our marriage, we both feel like God has specifically blessed us and gifted us. That is a blessing from God. How often do we stop every morning and thank God for that? Thank God for our children. Thank God for just the little things, the provision that we have through our jobs, that I'm gifted with the job that I have, but we consider these things more a byproduct of our own work, right? And so that's why we stop giving grace to God or thanks to God for them, because ultimately we're selfish, sinful people. And so we just naturally go like, well, I got a really good job right, because I went to school and I've worked really hard and I've done this. And so therefore I got this good job and I make all this money. No, you didn't. God gave you that job because he has a reason. He wants you to use it, and you should be thankful for it. But we don't allow him to transform our lives. And I think why that's important is because God will only be able to transform the areas of our lives that we are willing to give over to him. And I think that's what thankfulness is, right? It's a conduit to allowing ourselves to understand that we aren't a part of this, that God is working through us. And through that, it allows our hearts to be transformed to his, which is where you start to get to that 301, 401, 501 understanding of faith. But it's these first steps of understanding that we have to start giving little things over to God too, and recognizing how he's using them through our lives.
The idea of threshold is also the idea of value. What do we value? So if we value something highly and somebody gives us this thing that we value highly, we're excited about that and we want to say thank you. So as parents, one of the things that the three of us understand yes, there is joy when we give something big. We're able to give something big to our kids, whether it's a great experience, a great meal, a great vacation, whatever it is, going to fireworks, and they see it for the first time. It's like watching their little minds be blown, and it's so fun.
Yeah.
But we get just as much joy, and they don't know this. Kids don't understand this. We get just as much joy being able to say, you need one of those? I have one of those in my drawer. Hang on, let me go get it. Yeah. And it's this little thing, this like nothing thing. And we come out and go, here you go. And we meet that need.
Yep.
And now they can continue on doing what they were doing. And it doesn't hit their radar of this is such a big deal.
Yep.
But we get just as much satisfaction and joy out of being able to do that. And God is a father. He's a loving father. So even the little things, even I go to my, and this happens quite a bit, I go to my drawer in my garage to do something. I got to fix something, and I've got an extra one of these things. And is it hard to go down to Menards? No, I love going down to Menards. But the truth is it's there. And there's this little bit of, God, thank you that's there. First of all, that we have enough that I have to have drawers to keep all the things that I have, the extra things that I'm not even using. Thank you that this was here for me. It was an easy thing.
Yeah.
Provided by, and it's a little thing, but that also keeps that heart of gratitude going. And so often our miss in all this and why we're not thankful in the big things is that we're not practicing thankfulness in the little things.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're the only one here with little children in your home.
Yes.
So how do you, as a daddy, foster thankfulness in your children? Because we learn it.
In my children?
Yeah. I just think of who your parents are. So I know they taught you thankfulness.
Oh, yeah.
And so how are you doing that with your children? Like with Finley?
Yeah. I mean, we try to very diligently just talk about gratitude and gratefulness and specifically too in gratefulness towards God, towards our Heavenly Father for what we have been blessed with. And we contrast that with understanding that everyone's not given these things. Even just, our kids are in public school. Some of Finley's friends have difficult situations that they're living through. Parents splitting up, just hard things for 9-year-olds.
Yes.
And so it opens conversations where we can kind of talk about understanding, helping her work through, why is my friend being mean to me right now? Well, it's because she's walking through these things, but then we contrast that with, doesn't that make you grateful for what you've been blessed with in that? So it's just, it's really kind of trying to help them understand that these things that we're given, we shouldn't take for granted. Not everyone has these things, that these are blessings and that it's ultimately God's, He's given it to us. So
part of the reason I asked is our daughter, Megan, and our son, Cody, they are allowing the granddaughters to have a little text thread with me. And so it's been very fun. And so Millie started, hey, Addie, what was the best part of your day yesterday? Nana, what was your favorite part? And so it's been really fun to watch them share their things. And I'm like, is it that easy? You know what I mean? Is that how we
Well, that helps me understand what you're doing in meetings.
Yeah.
Yesterday's best.
Yesterday's best.
Tammy's texting her grandkids. Yes.
On it, Nana. Get off the phone.
It's very possible that has happened because, can do many things at the same time. I haven't read this psalm yet. Should I read this psalm?
Yeah.
Let's go for it. So, all right. So Psalm 21 says, O Yahweh, in your strength, the King rejoices, and in your salvation, how greatly he exalts. You have given him his heart's desire and have not withheld the request of his lips. For you meet him with rich blessings. You set a crown of fine gold upon his head. He asks life of you. You gave it to him, length of days, forever and ever. His glory is great through your salvation. Splendor and majesty you bestow on him, for you make him most blessed forever. You make him glad with the joy of your presence. For the King trusts in Yahweh, and through the steadfast love of the Most High, he shall not be moved. Your hand will find out all your enemies. Your right hand will find out those who hate you. You will make them as a blazing oven when you appear. Yahweh, you swallow them up in his wrath. Yahweh will swallow them up in his wrath, and fire will consume them. You will destroy their descendants from the earth, and their offspring from among the children of men. Though they plan evil against you, though they devise mischief, they will not succeed, for you will put them to fight. You will aim at their faces with your bows. Be exalted, O Yahweh, in your strength. We will sing and praise your power. So I just need to confess, even as I'm reading that, and, he is praying for people to be annihilated, praying war kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That's hard for me,
Yeah.
my feeler self. Mm-hmm. How do we reconcile that?
Yeah, this is when ultimately you're praying, and I mentioned this in the message this weekend, the bloodshed aspect. Mm-hmm. There's almost an excitement in the bloodshed too often, and we have made war way too interesting and way too appealing through movies and TV and everything else, and the people who I've talked to who've actually been in combat, they do not see it that way. It is not romantic. Yeah. It is not good. It is not healthy in any way. And they're not always feeling as proud as we feel for them. Because they survived just barely. So, he is praying. I mean, let's be honest about what he's praying. David is praying in Psalm 20 that they would go out and defeat their foes, which, they're not playing paintball. They're killing each other.
This is real war.
Hand-to-hand combat, swords, bits of bone and brain matter and under a hot sun. It's nasty, nasty war. And at the end of the day, there are sons not coming home to moms, and there are husbands not coming home to wives and children. And it's the idea that God takes sides is hard for us, isn't it? Yeah. And this is one of the deepest questions in all of philosophy is how does God do this? Why does God? I think Richard Dawkins has wrote an entire book about this. Why I don't believe in God is, the thesis of why he doesn't believe in God is the idea that God is a monster. Yep. To want people to go out and slaughter one another is. So there's not an easy, quick answer. I'll say this, a couple things. One is these are not innocents who are dying. Okay. These are people who have allied themselves with God's enemies, and God has given them time and opportunity to turn and to repent, and they have chosen not to. And so what happens in many of these battles is God is visiting judgment on them. And we're okay with this. We're okay with judgment in our world as long as the people who are judged are the ones who do bad things as we define them. Yeah. Then we want judgment. We want the hand of God to fall upon them. But it's the faceless, nameless folks who, well, maybe they didn't do anything wrong. Yeah, actually they did. There's a piece there. There's also a piece of this is not the world God created for us. We brought this violence, war, all this stuff. God is allowing what we have chosen, and he is sparing some. And the fact that he is holding back total destruction is just a sign of his grace and compassion. So those are just a couple things right off the top of my head. That
I just think I'm probably not the only one that wrestles with that.
No,
and I'm pretty
it's
sure.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's a good thing to wrestle with. And God's a big God. We can't ever ask him a question that stumps him.
Yep.
Right.
And he knows that we have these questions. And I know that there are those who are way more sensitive to this than others. There's some that see this and they shrug and it's not a big deal. There are others who know they have a real challenge loving a God who would allow this to happen and to some degree promote it. we also have to remember these are David's words, and David putting them to praising and honoring God, which he should do. But I don't know that God is rejoicing that these innocents are dying, and they're not innocents, but that these people are dying. It breaks God's heart to see this happen. But again, he's giving us what we have chosen: violence, sin, tearing each other down, hurting one another.
Is there anything else that you can think of that you would love to talk about on Sunday, but time doesn't allow that?
Yeah, probably most every point. I always have to stop myself. Like, okay, that's going to be a rabbit trail. I can't talk about that. The main idea that we want to take away from all this is just the idea that we need to think very carefully and do some business with God when it comes to how we respond to him for everything. And we tend to think of material possessions. We tend to think of, I think the same way I think of my marriage and children and all these things as blessings. They are from the Lord. But we also have to remember that we are in 1/3 of the world, 2/3 of the world has none of the above. They don't have access to most of the things that we do. And they still find a way to honor and praise and glorify God.
And there's still things for them to be thankful for.
Yeah, they ate that day. They found some water that day. Praise God for that. I mean, that's a huge deal. Yeah. So what feels like small things to us are big things to them. And they have found a way to praise and honor and glorify God. And we do too, in all things.
I know Andy and I chose for me to be a stay-at-home mom. And so me working and having a different income, I never want to forget God's faithfulness, because now as I get to choose to do things, I'm like, there was a time that I wasn't able to do that. And so, but I was still happy then. And so, and I think pretty content. But I know that even the life that I'm living is very different than what Tami lived 20 years ago. Yeah. So we can learn from our brothers and sisters that are praising the Lord for the water. So.
And aren't you glad that you didn't have the comparison of Tami now and have to go back to Tami then and try to live after having lived Tami, now the going to backwards would be difficult. And a lot of times wherever we are in our situation, we can praise and honor and glorify God. And some of us do it out of ignorance because we don't know that there's anything better out there. Yeah. And praise God for that. Praise God that we don't know that there's anything better. And as things do improve and get better, our glory for God just increases.
But I can also see a danger in it, because there was a time it's like, okay, can we buy this? Should I buy this? And now there's money. Does that make? And so I think I have to really ask, like, is this necessary? It would be so easy to become, well, like you had said, just self-sufficient and thinking, we're doing it. So good lessons. Well, thank you for joining us. And thank you for joining us. Have a great week. Bye-bye.